Stephen. Hey, congratulations on your documentary, Merchant Ivory.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I understand it's quickly approaching that it's going to be showcased at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. I mean, you must be proud of it.
Yes.
One of the most prestigious film festivals in the country.
Yeah, for sure. And I live in Palm Springs, so it's also nice to have three screenings because they've actually programmed the film for three screenings in Palm Springs. So yeah, it's great. So we had our world premiere at DACA NYC in November. And that was wonderful. But again, being able to show the film in my hometown with all my friends from Los Angeles able to come out and see it in a theater is just, yeah, it's a gift. It's awesome. Yep, so super super thrilled. And then it's kind of like this embarrassment of riches situation because James Ivory, they're doing a spotlight on James Ivory, and they've programmed five Merchant Ivory films, kind of playing throughout the festival, at various points. So they're showing Shakespeare Walla, the Bostonians, Quartet, Howard Zand, and Morris. So those five films. And I traveled to upstate New York 2 weeks ago to film Jim giving introductions for each of those five films. So really, James Ivory has been integrated into the film, the best we could. So super excited about that as well.
Wow, that is amazing. Lots of good things for this documentary. But we have to
Yeah.
ask, is
Yeah.
what sparked you to do this documentary in the first place?
Yeah, so Merchant Ivory has always been kind of important in my life. Like I've seen those four films that I feature in my documentary film, A Room of the View, Morris, Howard Zand, Remains of the Day. Those four films were really kind of important for my life. Like I saw Morris as an 18-year-old kind of gay guy in the closet, and that film really spoke to me and really was important for the trajectory, I would say, of my life. And of course I had seen A Room of the View before that, and I fell in love with Howard Zand and Remains of the Day. I mean, which was really the pinnacle of Merchant Ivory. And so I was aware of who they were. I lived in upstate New York. They had that house in Claverack, or Jim has that house in Claverack in the Hudson River Valley. So I was aware that there were these filmmakers in my backyard. And then kind of fast forward to me going to Los Angeles, where I lived for many years, went to USC, went to film school, and then started to make my own, films, my own short films. I made many short films, and then I made a short animated film. So I was introduced, which is called Rich Atmosphere: The Music of Merchant Ivy Films, which you can see, which you can see online. It's on my website. But that I made a 5-minute animated film. I had interviewed James Ivory. I was introduced to Jim from my friend Peter Cameron, who was the novelist of the novel The City of Your Final Destination, which was Merchant Ivory's last film. I met James Ivory, and I interviewed him twice for that film. And these were just talking head interviews, and they were just kind of boring. And so I decided to turn that film into an animated film. Worked with this beautiful animator in London. His name is Jack Cunningham. Finished the film. Took me like a year to make it because animation takes so long. And I showed it to James Ivory, and he loved it. Like he was just so impressed. He thought it was so creative, and loved the way the music was, loved his narration in it. And I sensed the door opening and an opportunity. And so I had gotten to know Jim better over time. And so I pitched to him I said, nobody's made a film, the definitive look. Like there's DVD extras, right? Where they'll have a behind the scenes of Remains of the Day, a little featurette thing. And so I just made the pitch, and Jim said yes. And then that's how I started to embark on it. And I'll say it just took it was a process, right? When you're making a film and you have one person who's, James Ivory is obviously the anchor of my film because he's the last one alive out of the four pillars of my film. Ismail, Dick, Ruth, and Jim. And, we just built, like, the trust was built interview by interview. And then I did a long trip to London where I shot 28 or 30 of the interviews in a 2 week period. And that's when I got to meet with Helena and Emma and Hugh Grant and Vanessa Redgrave and all the folks behind the camera, because Merchant Ivory had such a, they were kind of, they were in London for a long time in the 90s. And so, yeah, and so that's how it started. It's really started with that short animated 5-minute film, Rich Atmosphere, the music in Merchant Ivy films, because the music was one of my, I'd say the music, I mean, I love the films, right? We all love the films, but a lot of people say that it's the music that stays with them long term. And there's a lot of folks out there that listen to these film soundtracks from Richard Robbins. I mean, I've learned that kind of over time in making the film. People love his music. So again, I was really thrilled to be able to showcase Ruth and Dick Robbins and their long collaborations with Jim and Ismail, who are certainly key to Merchant, they are Merchant Ivory, but it was so wonderful to get all of the other players and all the other members of the Merchant Ivy family to like chime in and give their own take on what it was like working with them.
I am amazed that you gathered so many people of the Merchant Ivory family for this project. I mean, I guess a lot of people wanted to say something about this company.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, they did, because I think for so many people, like, and the example that comes to mind, is Jenny Bevan, right? 3-time Oscar winner for best costume design, A Room in the View, Mad Max, and I think she just won for Cruella, which was, beautiful. And so Jenny Bevan, she got her start in film. So many people got their start in Merchant Ivy films. And I think I cover it in my film. They gave young actors their first role. Hugh Grant's first role was Morris. Emma Thompson had done a few films and a TV special with Kenneth Branagh or whatever. Like, but Howard Zinn was really her first big role, and then she ends up winning the Oscar for it. And Helena had done one film, Lady Jane, and then she did A Room with a View. So and Gwyneth Paltrow, she was in Jefferson in Paris. That was one of her first films. So again, they were notorious for giving people kind of early in their career their first or second or third opportunity. And then a lot of people, I mean, these folks just don't forget that, right? And I think that's why, and I think that there's still kind of a love. And I think Emma Thompson is the one who says, yes, of course she loved them, but she didn't want to work with them again, like after The Remains of the Day, because, she had done that and it was time to move on. And Jenny Bevan said the same thing after Jefferson in Paris, which was a very challenging, fraught production. Even though they had more financial resources, it was still another tight Merchant Ivy production with not enough people. And after that, she was done. And of course, she's friends with James Ivory still. But it's like, that's what's fascinating about this, is that folks did want to talk. And then there's even some examples like, Paul Bradley had a massive falling out. Paul Bradley, Merchant Ivory's executive producer for years, he had a massive falling out with, Merchant Ivory after The City of Your Final Destination. And I even got him to come on and talk, and his interview is phenomenal. But again, part of it too was me having to corral everybody together and to really, and this is when I'm the director of this film, but I'm definitely the producer of this film, because this film could not be made without somebody who was really driving it to get over the finish line, and really driving to get these interviews and to get these people. I mean, I got to tell you, like, Vanessa Redgrave did not want to sit down with me. And so she was very difficult. with me at first. She warmed up to me once we a little later on in the meeting, and she really did. She was great. But Emma Thompson, I mean, at first was like, no, I don't want to, no, I don't want to do it. But we were able to like get them, which is great.
I'm also astonished the fact that you got so much footage
Mm.
to be included in your film, especially since Merchant Ivory, they had to sell their collection and
Yeah.
they no longer exist. So how did you pull that off? Was it difficult?
Well, my distributor is Cohen Media Group, and so again, super like incredibly grateful and feel so fortunate that I mean they were always my target, right? Because I mean, who else? Where else would I go? They own 30 films in the Merchant Ivory library. My film will help Cohen Media sell their back, their library. And so that was my pitch, to them. And they agreed. And really, when people see this film, the most common thing I hear is, oh my God, I didn't know about Shakespeare Walla. I don't know that. I don't know Quartet. I want to see that. Or, oh, I haven't seen Howard's End since 1994. I want to see that. And so really people, that's really gratifying to me, is that hopefully people will discover the films of Merchant Ivory. Palm Springs, like I mentioned, they're doing a retrospective of Merchant Ivory films during this film festival. And, but yeah, I mean, and then, there's fair use. So there's certain clips that I could use pieces of that Cohen does not own, like A Room of the View, and I don't know, there's a few other, Mr. and Mrs. Bridge. And so you can use some, but really the four films, I mean, Cohen owns two of those. Sony Pictures Classics owns Remains of the Day, and a company called Goldcrest owns A Room of the View. Goldcrest, they weren't super easy to work with actually, but we got it done. But Sony was unbelievable. Michael Barker, who's the co-president of Sony, really gave just again unbelievable. Like sometimes you ask for something and you get it, so you can't be afraid to ask for things. And I'm not afraid to ask for things. And I wanted to use some music from Remains of the Day, right? Because that's the film that I pair with Richard Robbins. And Michael Barker of Sony Pictures Classics basically gave me access to Remains of the Day and some of the music from Remains of the Day, gratis at no charge. I mean, I did have to pay something somewhere down the line, but like the bulk of what I used from the Remains of the Day, I got, for nothing. And so, that's what was wonderful, is that people did want to talk about their experiences with working with Merchant Ivory. And for some people, it really was some of the best films they made. So for Michael Barker at Sony, he's probably so incredibly proud that that he was a part of the Remains of the Day. Like who wouldn't be?
True, true. Well, let me wrap it up with one last thing, Stephen, because I mean, it is very lucky that you got James to participate in this. I mean, it's a shameful that you couldn't get the other three because it's the timing is just wrong. But
Yeah.
tell us about us, speaking with James for such a length of time. I mean, I talked to him for like 3 minutes, and I wish I had like 2 hours to pick his brain.
Right. Yeah, and there is so much there. And I gotta say, James Ivory, he's 95 years old. And again, I was just with him 2 weeks ago shooting him for Palm Springs for the film festival. And I mean, he is sharp. He is sharp. And I mean, he's making, he's still shooting things. Like he's still writing a little bit on the side. So his story is inspiring. And I mean, I made the film because I was inspired by his story, and by the Merchant Ivory story. And I really wanted to preserve cinema history. That was probably my key. I wanted to make James Ivory, proud of what I created, and I wanted his blessing on it, and I had it, and he's really thrilled with the film. He loves it. And he did say to me, he did say that I had done what nobody had else had done before. He said that I captured them, and that I really presented them as who they really were, and that was hugely. That was just an amazing, compliment. Um, and yeah, I mean, the last thing I'd say is one of the beauties beauty of my film landing at Cohen is Cohen still releases DVDs, and so there will be a DVD and a Blu-ray release of the film after this film has its theatrical release. Um, and Cohen owns Landmark Cinemas, and so that's really cool because this film will actually get a theatrical release later in the year. But the DVDs, I've packaged a bunch of extras for the DVD release. And in those extras is our edited interviews, like 5 of my edited interviews of James Ivory. So you get more, and you get more of the stories from Jim. And to your point, 3 minutes is not enough. And even what I have in the hour and 51-minute film that I made is not enough. There's still so much there. And, the last thing I'd say is, and who else? I mean, who wouldn't want to hear Emma Thompson talking for 28 minutes instead of 2 or 2.5 or however long she's in the film? And so I was able to edit these interviews down, and those will be available. And I just think that's so important because for the fans of Merchant Ivy and the people who really kind of, are drawn to this film, I think there'll be more there for them to kind of, dive into.
So true, so true. And I'm thankful that you made this documentary, Merchant Ivory, because I always thought it was just period piece movies. I never thought about all the little things that actually went on
Yeah.
with these films. Now I'm gonna have to rewatch all of them.
See, and that's what Cohen Media wants to hear. That's great. And again, a lot of people don't know the Indian period, don't know that they shot, films in France. I mean, that's one of the things that I guess kind of, sometimes annoys Jim is that everybody wants to program A Room with a View, Morris, and Howard Zand in The Remains of the Day. I mean, and what's funny is I anchored my film with those films because those are the films that people remember, but he likes to remind people that there are many other films and out there that he directed that are his favorites, like Mr. and Mrs. Bridge and Quartet are 2 of his favorite films. And Mr. and Mrs. Bridge is an exquisite, wonderful film with Joanne Woodward and Paul Newman. I mean, it's beautiful, it's stunning, but people don't know it. People don't see it. It's not easy to get. So, yeah.
Well, it's an excellent compilation of everything in the
Yeah.
comments. So, Stephen, thank
Well,
you very
thank you so
much
much. Yeah,
for
thank
speaking
you very
with us,
much.
and hopefully we will catch up with you again someday. Thank
All
you.
right, that sounds wonderful. Thanks.